Hello everyone, so today we are going to learn how to use React PDF package. This is basically React PDF viewer. It's powerful, fast, and developer friendly, right? As you can see, this is the default theme, right? This top bar right here, the sidebar, etc. This is basically the default theme. You can search any text in here, for example, website, all right? I'm going to hit enter, and as you can see, it works, right? I can zoom in right here, right? And of course all the feature in here is works, right? The dark mode, light mode, and etc. And the beauty about this React PDF is you can customize it. As you can see here, this is the example. You can customize whatever you want. The icon, right, using font awesome, for example. You can change the color here. You can change the font. You can change the language settings in here to English, Chinese, and etc. And of course, you can create your own PDF preview. As you can see in here, the top bar is totally different, right? You can create your own PDF preview. So that's what we're gonna learn in this video. So React PDF is basically paid library. You can check that out on the pricing page right here. But one thing that I find really interesting is that it's a basically one-time payment. That means you can pay once and you can use it forever. No subscription, no monthly fees. For developers or company who want to build a powerful PDF reader or advanced PDF experience, I think this pricing model is very fair. So let's see how we can install it. This one right here, you can install with using this command right here to install the package. And we're going to use React basically. To generate a React application, we're going to use Vite in this video. So we're going to use this React TS, which is React TypeScript. So let's generate the React application. I'm going to create a project called My PDF App. And as you can see, I'm using template React TypeScript. So let's hit enter. Of course, I'm going to say yes. And what is this? This is experimental. I'm going to say no and install npm and start now. I'm going to say yes. So now you can open the localhost 5173. This is the default, the Vite React application, right? So we can set it to my PDF app. And then I'm going to open that using Visual Studio Code. So now let's try to install the React PDF package. Let's go back to the React PDF and then copy this command here. I'm going to copy that and then paste and hit enter. Alright, so now as you can see on the package.json file, we should see this PDF viewer / React, it's version 1. Great, so we can do npm run dev. So now let's go to docs and let's see how we can use that package. So here we can click the getting started, and then as you can see, this is the way we installed that. We're already doing that. So let's go to basic usage. As you can see, this is the anatomy. Pretty simple. First, we have the rp config. This is the configuration license. That means you can paste the license key in here on rp config as a props. And the rp theme is basically theme customization. This is optional. And then the rp provider, this is require. You can put a source in here, I believe. And then the rp default layout, this is the default layout container. And then finally the PDF page render, which is the rp pages. So let's take a look. In here, I'm using React and then I'm using TypeScript. So I'm going to click that. This is the way we using that. Pretty simple, right? So let's just copy that. For now, I'm not going to using the license key. So let's try to go to the app.tsx in here. And then I'm going to paste it, right? Just like this. And of course, we have to import the rp config. I'm going to remove all things right here that we don't need. So after rp config, we have to put the rp provider and also the rp default layout and rp pages. So I'm going to copy also this one right here, everything, right? Just copy and then paste that like this. Of course, we have to import the provider, default layout, and rp pages. And as you can see, this is basically the file example, right? The PDF file. So let's try to save that and let's take a look on the browser. I'm going to refresh that. And then hopefully now, as you can see, the PDF is just rendered. But as you can see, the width and height is not what I want. So maybe the first thing what I have to do is trying to just remove the app.css. Let's try to see. As you can see now, it's on the left side. And also I'm going to wrap this rp config using div, right? Just wrapping all of that. And I'm gonna put inline style on this div. Let's do style, and then here I'm gonna do height into 100 view height, and also the width I'm gonna setting that into the 100 view width as well. So let's save that. Let's take a look. Now as you can see, this is the result, right? And yep, it works. As you can see, it's just rendered right here. And of course, if you have the file in your project, you can just specify that file like this, whatever the name of the PDF file, right? Just like this, it should be works. So let's make it back. And now what we have to do is, I like to using Tailwind CSS basically before we move on. So let's try to open the Tailwind CSS, and I'm going to get started in here, and we are using Vite, right? So let's just install the Tailwind CSS right here. All right. And then next thing is we have to put this Tailwind CSS inside the what is that, Vite config.ts file. So here I'm going to give a comma and then paste the Tailwind CSS like that, and just import the Tailwind CSS on the CSS. Let's go to index, remove everything, and paste the Tailwind CSS like that. And now you can run npm run dev. And then let's go back to here. I'm going to remove the app.css here. We don't need that. Let's try to see what we have. All right, so now let's see. We are going to change this style here, inline style in here, using just class name from the Tailwind CSS. So we can put the height to screen and also the width into screen as well. If I hover that, as you can see here, it should be same, right? With 100 view width and height 100 view height. If I save that, the result, it should be same. Great. So I think I like to create the component folder, right? So let's do that in here. I'm going to do inside the source. Let's do components, and then inside that, I'm going to create a file called PDF viewer base.tsx. So what I'm going to do in here is basically I'm going to return this RP, or maybe the RP provider. So I'm going to cut this one here, right? Just cut that out and paste that in here, so I can using this component to anywhere I want. So that's why I just putting that in here, right? This component should be reusable component. So let's try to change the name in here. So I'm going to paste PDF viewer base. Great. So for the RP provider, we are going to import that like that. So now I can just copy the component name and then trying to render that in here. This basically just do the same thing, right? Just import that component and it should be do the same thing. If I save that, and as you can see, it's still working. So I'm going to add another props in this PDF viewer base. So let's try to create the interface on the top. So I'm going to copy and paste this interface in here. It's like a children as a React node, and then source string, right? I'm going to put the PDF viewer base props, and here we can just grab the children and also the source, right? Here we go. So for the source, by default, I'm going to put this link right here. So I'm going to copy that and just paste that in here as a default value, just like this. And then let's just put the source in here, src set equals to src, like that. And the children, I'm going to putting that on maybe under the RP provider. So let's put in this right here. Great. So now as you can see, it's still working, right? And I can do like, for example, here, I can say like this, and I can put like a children in here, like say, let's say heading 1 and top bar. If I save that, as you can see, we have this top bar on the top. The reason is because there's a children in here. Okay, great. And of course, I can put any source to replace the default value. So the first feature that we're going to customize is the search functionality. So as you can see here on this PDF preview, basically we can using search in here. There's an icon in here. I can click that and I can search, for example, a JavaScript. I can hit enter. And as you can see, everything is just works, right? On the default theme, everything is works basically. But maybe you want to create your own PDF preview. So that's why in here we are going to customize the search UI. So that's why, let's go back in here. We are going to use hooks. The hooks name is useSearchContext, this one right here. So inside the use search context hooks, we can grab the search value, set search, loading, match, and etc. Right? This is the example. And this is the example look like. As you can see, the search is on the top, but anyway, we always can putting that inside the top bar. So let's try here. I'm gonna go back and let's try to create folder. I'm gonna create a folder called PDF, right? And then inside that, I'm going to create a folder again called search, right? This is for search things. And inside of search, I'm gonna create a file called search demo.tsx. Here we go. So let's do RFC, change the name to search demo like that. And then we are going to import it on the, maybe in here, right? This is just for example, search demo like that. If I save that, of course, now we should see this search demo on the top. So let's try to create the UI. Here, I'm gonna go back to search demo, and first I'm gonna create class name, display flex, item center, and gap is 3. And inside this div, first I have the input, right? So input, it should be have input tag, right? And of course, this just works if you want to use setcn UI, for example, it should be works. Here I'm going to use input, and then let's just put class name. We have a border, the rounded large, and the padding horizontal is 3, vertical is 2, and then the width is 52. If I go back, as you can see, this is the input field, right? This is still outside the top bar, but I'm going to show you how to putting that inside this top bar basically. Great. So we have the input, and the next thing is I can create like a button search in here. So let's do button and then search, right? In here, I'm going to put class name. And anyway, I like to create custom class, so we can use that custom class to anywhere we want. So here on the index.css file, I'm going to create apply, I believe. So I think not apply, but first we have to put the name of the class. So for example, btn custom, and then inside this, we can apply any CSS we want. For example, the px is 3, and then the py is 2, and then the rounded is large, for example, right? Large. And then we can put the background blue 500. And also the text is white. And when I hover that, I can change the background to blue 700, for example. Here we go. Now we have the btn custom class. So we can just copy that and then just paste that right here, right? And now it should be works. As you can see, we have the search button in here. That's nice. But now as you can see, it should be not working. If I do Java, hit enter, nothing happened, right? So let's try to make this happen. Let's go back to the documentation. And the first thing is I'm going to copy every value inside the use search context in here. Or I think I'm going to copy everything in here, copy that, and then just paste that like this, right? And of course, the use search context is come from the PDF viewer / React, and the use state is come from the React. Here we go. And I like to put the default value is also empty string in here. So I just like to change the name here into the value like this. I think it's fine. It should be uppercase like this. So now we have to put the value inside the input. So here we are going to put another props called value. So equals to value like this, and we can put on change event, right? Set equals to on change. On change for now is not yet available, right? There's no on change function, so we have to creating that on here. So we can say cons on change so equals to arrow function. So anyway, this function, it should be available on the documentation. As you can see here, handle change, right? It's using use callback. And the type is change event HTML input element. I hope you can see this, right? It's too small, I think. And anyway, it just set the search value into e.target.value, and that's it. So we can just copy this use callback. So of course we have to import the use callback, the change event, and then this is not set search value, but set value. Just like that. And now we should see the value on the console. If we console that here, I'm going to go back, open the console. And then here, let's do console. If I typing something in here. So anyway, the search happened when I click this button right here, the button search, right? So that's why on this button, I'm going to add on click event. So we can do on click, so equals to on search function. We don't yet have that. So let's create cons on search, so equals to error function. If you take a look on the example here, so basically everything is available on the documentation. Here, as you can see, it is the handle submit. So anyway, we can just copy this function here and just paste that, right? And as you can see, it set the search, right, come from the use search context into the value come from the state, the value here. Anyway, here we go. So now it should be works. For example, Java, hit search in here, and as you can see, it just works, right? That's pretty simple. Let's do HTML, for example. If I click search, as you can see, all HTML is highlight, right? So now I'm going to put the counter span. I'm going to putting that in here, right? Let's paste that. This is the counter, it's just span. And then here I paste the current match position and the total match. So let's take a look. It's 1 per 24. That means there's a 24 Java keyword in this document, right? Great. So next thing is let's implement the next and preview. So here I'm going to create a button. So this button, I'm going to give a name brief, right, for preview. And then this button is basically will click this brief match. Brief match is basically function from the use search context, right? Just that's it. And then next thing is I'm going to put the next button. So here, this is the next button. This next button, when I click that, it should be running the next match function. And the next thing is I'm going to put the loading. So let's just put this loading right here. If the loading is true, it's basically render this span with text searching, right? Just that's it. So let's go back in here. Now as you can see, if I click next, now we're on the 2, right? The second Java keyword on the document. If I click next again, as you can see, it just works basically. If I go back, it also works. How cool is that, right? That's pretty simple. Now the question is how I can put this input, right, the search here into this top bar. So the way we're doing that is pretty simple. So first, I think, let me just trying to go back to PDF viewer base. We have to first remove the RP default layout. I'm going to, just remove that. I think it's fine. Or I think just comment that so you can just always go back to the code, right? As you can see, if I remove that, now it looks like this. But still, it's not inside the top bar. So the way we're putting that inside the top bar is here. I'm going to use RP layout, right? This is a component. And I'm going to put the RP pages inside that. And also, I'm going to put the toolbar props in here. Set equals to an object. And inside in here, I have top bar, right? The top bar, it should be have an object. And I'm going to put component. And in here, I'm going to render whatever I want. For example, just text in here. I'm going to, as you can see here, it's just render inside the top bar. So of course, in here, we can just put the children. We know the children is basically a component, right? If I go back in here, this is the children. The search demo is basically the children. So now as you can see, it's inside in here, right? It's inside the toolbar. So we can just remove the children here. And here we go. It's still inside the toolbar right now. So for example, this placeholder right here, right? If I refresh, now we have the placeholder. So anyway, this is working, right? So next we are going to learn how to customize the highlight text. So we are going to use the hooks called useHighlightContext, right? This one right here. So the result example, it should be look like this. So you can highlight some text that you want, right? So let's go back in here, and inside the PDF folder, I'm going to create another folder. I'm going to call that highlight, right? And inside the highlight, I'm going to create a file. So I'm going to give a name highlight keyword demo.tsx. So here I'm going to create RFC like that. Just change the name. into this component name highlight keyword demo like this. And now we can just using that or export that on this PDF viewer as a children. So you can do like keyword demo like this. So I'm going to comment the search demo, and as you can see, now we should see this highlight keyword demo text, right? So basically in here, you always can put a div, for example, you can put div and you can add class name, for example, the width to full, the border, the padding, and the background, right? You can always do that. Here, I'm going to put the highlight keyword demo inside that. And then as you can see, the result, it should be look like that, right? So let's see on the documentation, as you can see here, we can grab some value or function inside the hooks, inside the useHighlightContext. So anyway, I'm going to copy this use effect and also this highlight. I'm going to copy that, go back in here and trying to paste it, right? So of course we have to import the useHighlightContext from the PDF viewer, and also we have to import the use effect. So as you can see, what happened in here is on the first render, this is will running, right? And what running is the highlight function. And inside this function is basically like an array. And inside the array, we have some object, right? First, we have the keyword and then the color, right? So I'm going to change the keyword in here to JavaScript. Let's try to just remove this text into JavaScript, and another keyword is languages, right? So this is regular expression match the word languages in a case insensitive manner. So let's try to see what we have. So as you can see here, the languages is highlight, right? Is the color, and also the JavaScript keyword as well, right? So let's scroll down and let's take a look at another page. This one right here, the languages, JavaScript. You can put an option like a match cast to true or whole words to true as well. And this is basically the opacity, I believe, if I put 1, for example. So let's try to refresh and let's see. As you can see, just make sure don't put a number 1 because you cannot see the text. So just put 0.5, I think it's fine. And this text in here, it should be rendered on the top right here, right? And how if I want to highlight if I click the button, right? Not on the first render, but I want to highlight when I click button and clear the highlight when I click the button as well. So how do we do that? So anyway, what I'm going to do is let's go back in here. I'm going to return this div with some button, right? As you can see, this button is have text clear highlight with this class name btn custom, and when I click that, it should be running the clear function. So the clear function is basically come from this useHighlightContext hook, so you can grab that like this, and also we can run the set highlight when I click the highlight button. So here I'm going to create the function called set highlight, and what I'm going to run in here is basically this highlight. So I can just copy this one, copy that, and just comment the use effect, and then just paste that like this. Anyway, it should be works. Let's go back here. So I think the condition right now is this button is too much large, right? This button right here. So let's try to go back to index.css, and I think I'm gonna do that like just by. Let's try to see. Yep, I'm gonna put value like 1, for example. Save that, and as you can see, now we have this border bottom, right? So let's take a look here. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see clearly. And for example, these languages and this JavaScript is not highlighted right now, right? So I'm gonna click this highlight and boom, right? It works. And of course, if I click the clear highlight, it should be also clear the highlight. Let me just click that. Here we go, right? It just works basically. That's how you highlight a text using these custom hooks right here. The hooks come from the PDF, right? Use highlight context. That's pretty nice. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is we can jump to the next highlight keyword programmatically. That means we can create the sidebar. As you can see, this is the example. So in that sidebar, we can just put any text we want, any keyword we want, and then all page that have that keyword will be rendered on the sidebar, and we can just click any button we want or any page we want to go that specific page on that keyword, right? So this is the example right here. So we can create something like this basically. So on inside a highlight folder, I'm going to create file. Here I'm going to call that highlight-sidebar.tsx. And here I'm going to do RFC, change the component name. So I'm going to say highlight sidebar like this. And now you can just export that on the app.tsx right here. So let's do that. What the name of the file? Highlight sidebar. Here we go. If I save that, now we should see text highlight sidebar on the browser here, right? Highlight sidebar. The highlight sidebar component is rendered as a top bar, but we don't want that. We want the highlight sidebar. It should be becoming the sidebar of the PDF right here on the left side. So how do we do that? Here we can go back to the PDF viewer base, and then in here we can grab the sidebar, I believe, or the name should be left sidebar. Yep. In here we can just specify the component we are going to render in here. It should be come from the children, right? If I save that, now as you can see, the highlight sidebar, it should be on the left side, right? And then how about the top bar? So anyway, the top bar, I just want to put that as the default value, which is the RP horizontal bar, right? This component is come from the PDF viewer, basically. As you can see, this is the result, right? The top bar is becoming the default value, the default styling, and now we have the highlight sidebar right here as a custom sidebar. So first, I like to styling the div highlight sidebar in here. So I'm gonna put class name and put this padding, the width and the border, and as you can see, overflow Y to auto. So let's take a look at the result. As you can see, it's look like this. I'm gonna put heading 2 in here inside the div. So let's just remove the text in here, and now we are gonna using heading 2 like this, highlight keyword. As you can see, it should be rendered in here. I'm gonna create a button, right? So this button is basically have a on-click event, and this on-click is running the clear function. So the clear function, it should be come from the hooks. Let's go back to here. And as you can see on this example, I think we can grab the clear from the useHighlightContext, I believe. So I can copy this hooks. And here, let's try to say cons. We can grab the clear from the useHighlightContext. We can just import that like this. Great. So now we have this clear highlight button on the bottom, right? So as you can see here, clear highlight. What is this? So what this line right here? I'm not sure what is that. So I think this is because we put the border bottom in here. So we don't need, in this case, we don't need this styling in this case because we're using the default top bar theme, right? So I'm gonna remove that, and as you can see, it should be look like this. We can also grab the highlight matches on these hooks, basically. Let's try to open the highlight sidebar, and we can grab these highlight matches, and I'm going to render that in here as well. So if the length is 0, I'm going to render this p tag that say no highlight yet. As you can see, look like that. So the first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the keyword or the text on the first render. So that's why in here, I'm going to run that inside the use effect, right? Like we're doing on the previous component, this one right here, we're doing that on the use effect, right? So let's see in here. On the first render, what we have to do is we run the highlight. So the highlight should be got from the useHighlightContext. And as you can see, what I highlight in here is the compilation technique keyword. This is the color, and also the JavaScript. This is the color, and also the keyword language and languages, right? So as you can see, I'm using this regex, right? It's basically match language or languages. This is the color. Great. So let me try to refresh that. And now all keyword that match, it should be have that color. As you can see, JavaScript, and we have this language, right? This language, capital L is not going to be highlight because I just setting that as a lowercase l in this case. So what we have to do next is basically in here, we are going to group the highlights by page for the sidebar. So here, this is the example. So we can just copy this group right here, right? I'm gonna copy that and just paste that like this. So anyway, we have some error. So let's try to see what is this? The match highlight or the group highlight. What is that? So let's try to go back on the documentation, and basically this is the type of the group highlight. So I'm gonna copy that and then just paste that on the top right here. Here we go. The match highlight, I'm gonna import that type from the PDF viewer. As you can see, now there's no error. Great. So I'm going to map through this group basically. So if you take a look on the documentation here, this one right here, so you can just map through the group right here. You can render that inside the li. And anyway, I'm gonna paste that in here, what I do so far. Here we go. So as you can see here, this OL, we have this text right here, the styling, and I just map through the group. As you can see here, the li that have the key index and etc. This is the span, this is the text basically, g.string. And then we have this button. This is basically the page number, right? The g.page is basically the page number. So let's try to go back in here and we are going to grab the go to page function. I'm gonna copy that and then paste that right here. Here we go. We have to import that. Nice. So now let's take a look at the result. Here, as you can see, all is this, it should be just render. As you can see, that's super nice. And then if I click that button, what happened is it should be running the go to page right here. So when I click the page 1, page 3, as you can see, now we're on the page 3. If I click the page 40, now we're on the page 40. This is the page, right? It works basically. If I click this language on the page 35, now we're on the page 35 and it works. So anyway, there's no text, there's no keyword that match with this compilation technique. So that's why there's no keyword in here. There's no that text, right? So if you take a look on the documentation here, this is basically using another doc. So I'm going to just copy this PDF, this link, and just go to the PDF viewer or just on the app right here, right? I'm gonna paste this new source like this. And as you can see, now we have this compilation technique match keyword. Let's try to make it bigger. Here we go. And then as you can see, it is the compilation technique. I can just click that. Page 12, for example. Where's that? This one right here, right? Great. So the next thing what we're going to learn is how to put element on that PDF. So we are going to use this useElementPageContext hooks. So basically we can put like a div element or anything as an overlay on that PDF. So let's take a look at the example here. As you can see, this red box in here is basically element, like overlay on that PDF, right? So we're going to learn how to do that. So we're going to use this box overlay like a highlight, for example. So let's try to implement that here. Let's go back to VS Code. And inside the PDF, I'm going to create a folder called element page. So let's do that. Element page like this. And then inside that, I'm going to create a file called overlaytools.tsx. In here, I'm going to do rfc, right? Change the component name. I'm going to say element overlay tools. So let's try to import that component to the app.tsx right here. So let's try to import that and just comment this highlight sidebar like this. So let's take a look what we have on the browser. It should be like this, right? The element overlay tools becoming the sidebar. So we don't want that. So let's go back to the PDF viewer base and then let's try to uncomment these children, right? Outside the RP layout. And then I'm going to remove the left sidebar here. Just comment that for now. Let's take a look. Here we go. Now we have element overlay tools on the top. So let's take a look what the first thing what we have to do. So let's just scroll up, right? And as you can see, the first thing is I'm going to create a variable called create HTML element. So I think I'm going to copy this one right here, right? And then just paste that outside the overlay tools component. So I'm going to paste that on the top like this, right? And as you can see, this basically just return the div. So this div is basically document.createElement.div. So this is basically the way we create HTML element in JavaScript, right? And then as you can see, set the ID to the element. So div.id set equals to ID. So the ID is come from the props, right? And then styling that a div. So we can put div.style background color, div.style.width, this is the width value, div.style.height, div.style.color, and etc. So this is basically just styling stuff. And then this is the position, right? div.style.top, this is the position, right? And then, okay, we done with the create HTML element. And the next thing is, let's try to see on the documentation. So first, I'm going to create this state right here called list. So I'm going to copy that state and paste that right here. So of course, we have to import the use state like this. And as you can see, this list is basically have this array one, and inside that we have the array and then some object, right? So to put element on that PDF, we have to use the hooks that I'm going to copy and paste this one right here. So let's try to copy that, right? And then I'm gonna paste that right here. Here we go. So we have to import that. As you can see, this is what we need. Update element. This basically will put the element on that PDF. So let's try to see how we can do that. So anyway, I'm gonna do that inside a use effect on the first render like this. So I'm gonna copy everything in here, right? And then just paste that. So I think I'm gonna paste that right here. Here we go. So let's take a look what we have. So first I'm going to import the use effect like this. So for now, I just want to remove this dimension and rotate and scale. We don't want that in this case. And then I just want to use this create HTML element that we create on the top, right? So just cut that out. Where is that? Just cut this create HTML element. And then I'm going to paste that inside this one right here. This is a const new element set equals to create HTML element, paste this ID, paste dimension, X and Y position. So now we can take a look the result. As you can see now here, we have two elements basically that have green background. This basically come from this list state. As you can see, we have two objects. That's why we have two value in here, two element. If I remove this one right here, try to save that. Now as you can see, we just have one element, right? This is the X and Y position. So that's why in here, I can just change that wherever I want. For example, the X is 100 pixel. It should be moved a little bit on the right side. And this is the Y position. I can also adding a value in here, like 100 pixel. So how about this number right here? Inside this array, we have number 1. So this means it should be applied on page 1. If I go back in here, as you can see, this is on the page 1, right? If I change that to, for example, 2, right? And save that, now if I refresh, it should be applied on page 2, right? I can do that, for example, like 2 page right here, right? 1 and 2, I can save that. And let's take a look. This is page 1 and this is page 2, right? This apply on 2 page, right? That's how it works. So of course, you can always add like an input for the X position, like the page, etc. Let me go back to documentation here. As you can see in this example, we can just put this input right here, like the number of the page, the number of the X position, and etc. So I'm going to copy everything in here, right? Copy that and paste that down here. So save, and as you can see, there's a couple things that we have to add, like a page and X. So this is basically state. So let's go on the top right here, and we're going to add that state. So I'm going to copy and paste this state right here, page, X, and Y. And also let's scroll down. As you can see, there's a couple things again, like handle clear, handle add, and handle go to element. So let's try to just comment that first. I just want to see the input. Let's try to go back in here, and as you can see, we have this input, right? So let's uncomment this button. Let's try to create the handle clear function. Or I think I can just go back to documentation and then try to just copy and paste all the function. So here we have the handle clear, right? Handle add. I'm going to copy everything. Here we go. Copy that and just paste that to here. Nice. So we have this use callback. We need to import that from the React. And here we go. Everything is applied. Let's try to see. Here I'm going to go back. And as you can see, by default, it's still 2 pages because I putting that as a default value on the list. I'm going to remove this one. Great. So now, for example, let me try to add a class name on the button first. I'm going to grab this button and add the class name. I'm going to call this btn custom, I believe. Save that and let's take a look. Here we go, right? And of course, we can always putting that on the div and putting all the button inside this div. So I'm going to add a space in here. Class name space x to whatever the value you want, like a 4, for example. And here we go. Great. So now I'm going to add element on page 1. X position is 0, Y position is 0. So let's try to click add. And here we go. Now, as you can see, we have this element, right? So let's try to click this clear. It should be clear that element as well. So let's take a look at the code. If I click add, what happened? It should be running the handle add function. And what happened is this one right here. This is basically just adding a new list on the list state, right? As you can see here, the page and the preview value and etc. That's it. How to remove that? Just remove the state, right? So anyway, let's try to add, for example, on the page 2, the X position, I'm going to say like maybe 10 pixel, Y position is going to be 15. So now as you can see, page 1, page 2 is empty. I'm going to adding that. Let me make it bigger. Here we go. I'm going to add. As you can see, now we have that element, right? That's pretty cool. I can go to first element on page. It's not working for now. Let's try to go back. Let's see what happened. If I click handle, go to element, it should be running this one right here, but it's not working, right? It's not working here. Let me try to refresh it. Click that and it works basically. I'm not sure. So let's try to add on the page 3, for example, adding that. And here we go. We have that value element. Let's go back to page 1 and it works. Anyway, everything works. And again, you can put this every value in here, every input on this top bar. Basically, what you have to do is pretty simple. You can just go back in here on the PDF viewer base, and you can putting that as a top bar right here. Just putting the children in here. Here we go. Just comment this one. And now everything, it should be right here, right? The input field, the X value, and etc. Right? You get the idea. So pretty nice. Let me just make that go back to this default value. Here we go. So anyway, if you don't like this green color like this, you always can change that color. For example, on this background color, you can put like a RGBA value like this. You can go back and refresh. As you can see, now it works, right? And of course, you can change the page right here to page 2, click add, and it should be also works. So anyway, next thing is we are going to trying to make a highlight using BBOX coordinate programmatically. So as you can see, this is the example, right? So let's try to go back in here and I'm going to create one file called BBOX Highlight Layer.tsx, right? So here I'm going to say RFC, change the component name into BBOX Highlight Layer, and I'm going to import that on the app.tsx right here. So let's comment this one, and then I'm going to say BBOX Highlight Layer. Here we go. Let's try to see. So now we see this BBOX highlight layer, right? Let's see how we can implement this one. So let's try to scroll down, and as you can see, the first is we can define the highlight data structure. So I'm going to copy this array as an example. I'm going to copy that, and then we are going to pasting that on these BBOX highlight. I'm going to putting that outside the component. Here we go. So as you can see, this is the highlight data list array that have this ID and then the page ID, right? The BBOX coordinate and then also the highlight color. Super simple. So next what we have to do. So let's go back to the docs, and here we need to create the helper function to group the highlight by page. So I'm going to copy this helper function. I'm going to copy that and paste that outside the component. You can put in that inside a component. I think it should be also works. And next thing is we need to import the update element from the useElementPageContext hooks, right? Like we're doing on these overlay tools basically. So let's do that in here. And we have to import the useElement hooks right here. The next thing is we need to running that inside the use effect. So let's try to just copy all of this use effect, right? And then paste that in. Here we go. So now let's import the use effect and it should be done. Let's try to see what happened. And here we go. As you can see, all the highlight is just render, right? That's beautiful. So let's try to see what happened in here. I think we don't need to return anything. So let's try to just return null in here. And we have some TypeScript error. So let's try to fix that first. So first I'm going to create type for this array object right here, right? So I'm going to do that on the top. It's basically called highlight item that have an ID. The ID is string and page index is number, bbox, and etc. Right? This is the type. And we can using that on here basically. So as you can see, this function is basically take a highlight parameter. And what is this highlight parameter? Is basically this one right here, right? As you can see, this function is based this highlight data list, right? The highlight data list is basically this array that have this type, right? So that's why I'm going to put this type inside this highlight. So the type should be highlight item in array like this. And also inside this highlight.reduce, I'm going to put this type right here, record number highlight item. And now as you can see, the TypeScript error, it should be gone, right? Nice. So let's move another error. There's no TypeScript error again. That's nice. Let's see. As you can see, it works. And anyway, we can always change the position to whatever we want. Like for example, this thing right here, right? And let me trying to do that, like the X position here to like a 5D, for example. I'm going to save that and refresh. As you can see, now it's right here. Okay. I can just change the width, for example. Let's do the width is 300 right here. I'm going to change that to 250 pixel. I'm going to refresh it. And here we go. Right. You always can change whatever you want in here. And as you can see, the page index is basically 0 base. That means if I put 1, it should be rendered on page 2. So that's why we have to highlight on page 2 right here, right? So if I change that, this one right here to 0, that means this highlight 1, it should be rendered on the page 1. Let me try to refresh that. Now the orange, it should be rendered on page 1. Alright, here's my personal take after trying and using the React PDF. If you only need to render a simple PDF, like just showing a document without any interactions, this package is probably not for you. There's other free library that can handle very basic PDF rendering. But if you want to build a full PDF reader website, something interactive where users can highlight text, search inside the document, annotate, customize the UI, and even design your own unique PDF preview, then React PDF is honestly the best option right now. So if your goal is to create something advanced and user-friendly, React PDF is absolutely worth it. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys on the next one.